Hey radio friends, I'm Mike, Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike, and this is your digital mode revival orientation, let's say. I think a lot of people would probably do something like this as a live stream or Zoom call or something like that. And like I coach people who are getting new into activating POTA, which I have a video series on how to do that. I tell people to start where you're at. Start with the equipment that you got, start with the skills that you got, and go from there. Don't try to do a whole bunch of other new stuff when you're trying to get this going. I'm following my own advice here. So I'm going to record and edit a video here and post it. And then your chance to comment, of course, is in the comment section down in the below the video here. And as you'll see as we go along, your comments are going to be very important. So what is this thing I mentioned, the digital mode revival? I've defined it here as an effort to organize regularly scheduled activity on non-FT8 digital modes with the intent of encouraging their use on a regular, unscheduled basis. So we are going to try to coordinate times, hopefully getting a lot of activators online on the air at the same time to all mesh together and be able to make contacts on these modes that we rarely can. But the intent of doing that is so that in the future, as we build more interest and more regular use of these modes, the regular schedule maybe isn't needed anymore. We want these modes to be used throughout the week, throughout the day, 24/7, so to speak. And anytime you want to go out and maybe do a POTA activation on PSK, you can do it. That's what we're talking about here. All right, so here's the quick executive summary if you don't have the time to sit through the whole video. We're going to run through all this here real quick in 5 minutes or so. As we said, the goal is to revive regular use of non-FT8 digital modes, okay? Nothing against FT8, all right? I'm not an anti-FT8 guy. I don't really enjoy it. I'm not against it. It just doesn't need help. I mean, you can already make any kind of FT8 contacts you want, anytime you want. It doesn't need any special treatment. It's the other modes that we're trying to get going. That's the only reason I call that I call out that non-FT8 mode. We're going to schedule activity on the first Friday of every month. That'll be our time. That'll be our regular schedule. So even if you don't get updates, you know something's supposed to be going on the first Friday. Those digital guys are going to be getting on the air and meeting and making all these contacts. So I want to be out there too and ready. We're going to rotate through several non-FT8 modes. And if you follow me on X, Facebook, this YouTube channel, or I'll have an email list too if you want to do it that way. I'll give updates on what modes that we're thinking of using, our suggested mode for that Friday for that month. Okay. You can follow me on X and Facebook. Those are non-monetized platforms for me. If you know that suits you. I'm not trying to grow my YouTube channel with this content. That's not what it's about. I'll demonetize this video. So I think that means there won't be any commercials. But if you want to stay away from the monetized stuff, you can follow me on X or Facebook, Travelin Ham, or just send me an email. I'm good on QRZ. Send me an email and say you want to be put on the email notification list, and I'll just build one of those. We're going to do a 3-month trial period. So I've got a little plan I'll lay out for you here over the next 3 months. We're going to do that, and that gets us through the holidays, through the 1st of January, and then we'll reevaluate at that point, consolidate any comments that I've gotten, evaluate what worked and what hasn't, and figure out how we want to proceed and go from there throughout 2026. So we're just going to lay out this plan, go with it here for a few months, and see what we need to change. So here's the schedule. We're going to plan on running RTTY on the first Friday in October. Then in November, we'll do JS8 call, and December, PSK 31. Then in January, and the reason I start with RTTY in October is so we come around to it again in January, and that'll pretty much line up with the ARRL RTTY Roundup, which I think actually starts the Saturday after. It's the Saturday after the first Friday. So I guess technically we could get out there and probably make a lot of contacts with guys practicing on Friday evening with RTTY. Make some contacts of our own, and you know, maybe even participate in the contest on Saturday. So I thought that lined up nice. Really wanted RTTY to land on January, so we started with it in October. And again, from that point, we will reevaluate how those first 3 months have gone, and with plans of working in other modes. You know, these are I thought we'd start with the 3 or 4 most common modes. I guess there's 3 there. The 3 most common modes. We may decide to cycle those a few times and then sprinkle in a different one every once in a while. We'll see. If there's someone in the group that wants to try a different mode, I personally want to put that in somewhere in the rotation so we can work that. I mean, there's not that many modes. We should be able to work them all in. And I like how this just sets out all by itself here on expectations. I'm a big believer in setting proper expectations, and a lot of what we perceive to be successful can merely be based on what our expectations were going in. Okay. So for me personally, I'm setting my personal expectations that will be off probably to a pretty slow start in the first couple months. We might even fail completely. You know, I tried just running JS8 call and putting a message out there on social media. Hey, I'm going to run JS8 call. Anyone want to join me? You know, and I got a couple, but I mean, it was kind of a fail. That's okay. We'll keep trying. I think if we start with proper expectations, we'll be less likely to feel discouraged and quit our efforts in the short term, right? So we want to start with nice low expectations and just try to slowly build up those results. So if I get, very little activity here in the first 2 months or so, not going to worry about it. We're just going to keep rolling. Try to keep getting the word out and grow it. All right, that's the executive summary. Now we'll go through everything a little more in depth. If this is all the time you got the gist of it. Okay, so who am I? There's probably quite a few of you out there wondering exactly that. My name is Mike Hopkins. Call sign is Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike. I got my General Ham license back in 2019. I'm actually a pre-COVID ham, I guess at least licensee. I didn't start operating right away because right about the same time while I was studying for both my tech and my general exams, we decided to try this thing where we would sell our house, buy an RV, and travel the country with the family full time. So those two things kind of happened at the same time, which was great. But when I got my license, it was in April of 2019. And there was a lot going on right then. I was in landscape design, and springtime's pretty busy. And we're also planning on getting the house ready to sell and for later that fall. So we were doing work around the house. There was a lot going on. I didn't have a whole lot of time to operate radio, so that didn't really come till a year later. For my personal background, I have a bachelor's degree in landscape architecture. My first dream job was to be a golf course architect, and did that right out of college. I went and worked for a golf course architect in Phoenix for a few years. Moved around then to a few other offices a couple times. Worked in a corporate engineering planning office. I worked for another really interesting office, an architecture office, for this old guy that actually studied under Frank Lloyd Wright. He was a pretty interesting guy to know. I didn't know Frank Lloyd Wright, but obviously the guy I worked for. But that's kind of my professional background. Obviously not too much of a technical background. I learned a lot of like grading and irrigation design and stuff like that to build large residential developments, grading out lots and roads and things like that, big irrigation systems. There's, of course, everything has technical knowledge, but there's not a lot of electrical engineering and technical knowledge like that in there. Certainly no computer science or anything like that. That was just coming on while I was in college. But that's my professional training and background, at least anyway. As I mentioned, we're a full-time RV traveling family. We have been on the road almost for 6 years now, coming up on 6 years. I have been primarily a POTA activator as far as my ham radio activities go. Just goes hand in hand with traveling in an RV, and I like to travel and see all the national parks, so that just goes hand in hand. The other important note here, I'm not really a digital guy, okay? I'm not trying to pass myself off as an expert in any of this stuff. I just see an opportunity to really grow this aspect of the hobby. There's a lot of interest. There's not a lot of activity. We'll get into that. So here's the problem with digital modes. I look at, the possibilities of when I think of the possibilities of making ham radio contacts, I picture a triangle, or I've shown a graphic where I have 3 overlapping circles. There's 3 factors involved here. What I'm considering my odds of making any particular contact. Okay, it's the 3 P's: propagation, power, and participation. Propagation is exactly what you think it would be. It's all the stuff that we can't control. Everything that goes up in the ionosphere that affects our HF communications. Okay, that's one. The second is everything I can control. And I call it power, but really it's the power that you're emitting plus, I guess it's your effective radiating power. So it's the power coming out of your radio and the gain of your antenna, the efficiency of the antenna. Those are all the things that I can control. That's power. But it's the third one that we really want to focus on for digital modes, and that's participation. That's what everyone else can control. I can have all the conditions. I can have all the power going through a directional antenna. But if I'm aiming in an area and my signal's coming down in an area where nobody's listening, what good does it do? Okay? If everyone if I'm running JS8 call and I'm beaming out to the East Coast, but everyone out there is just doing SSB, CW, and FT8, it doesn't do me any good. And you know what? If you get a goose egg in any of these 3 categories, you got no contact. And that's what we have in participation right now. For the most part, we have a 0. Okay, when I go in JS8 call, I get very little. I guess it's above 0, but I get very little participation. Unless you do something like put out a heartbeat, then you get all kinds of responses, but that's all automated, right? So we need to build that participation. That's the problem. Obviously, there's very few ops active, but there's plenty that are interested. I mean, we see those comments a lot, right? There's guys that say, boy, I wish we could do this. I wish more people ran this mode so I could do it. I'd love to run RTTY, from a park. I'd like to make SSTV contacts. I wish more people did it. There's plenty of interest out there. But any efforts that people make, that I've made, and I'm sure many others have made, to run those modes all have the same result. You just don't get many calls back. You certainly can't activate a park. You're certainly not going to get enough contacts to activate a park. That's what we want to try to fix. Obviously, those results are discouraging, and people give up, and that perpetuates the problem. However, the magic of all that, I think, is that we have repressed interest and very high potential for fast growth, because there's a lot of people out there that want to do it. They've tried and failed. So there's just a lot of energy and a lot of want to be able to use these modes. So there's a lot of fuel for the fire. If we can just add that spark, I think we can have a lot of real success right off the bat, because so many people have failed at this. So many of us have failed in trying to activate a park or just make contacts in general in the past. We can use that to our advantage. So the solution, it's just simple coordination. Simpler the better, right? Interested ops meeting at a predetermined time set by a regular, predictable schedule. So we're not relying on, I can send out email notifications and post stuff online, but even if you don't receive any of those, you still kind of know what's going on, because you know the regular schedule. You know when we're supposed to be meeting on the air, and it shouldn't be hard to figure out what's going on, which mode's going on, if you go on there and start hunting, right? So I think it's important not only to coordinate, but to have a regular, predetermined, predictable schedule to get as many people as possible participating. And again, we're talking about initial 3-month trial. Just get through the first in January, operating on the first Friday of every month. Okay, so we get to that first 3-month trial. Do we want to just keep cycling through the same 3 major modes just to build some momentum? Are there a couple people that really want to add their modes in there? Maybe we can give them a date that they can look forward to in the future at that time. Do we want to add things like a Zoom call, a regular Zoom call meeting, or anything like that to help us coordinate our efforts? Is that important? Do we want to have a Discord server? Steve, temporary offline Steve, offered his Discord page if we wanted to do something like that. We can start to think about all those things after this trial period, and then really be ready to go to start that new year. Okay, so what are some goals? Short and long term. Short-term goals are pretty obvious. We want to encourage the use of non-FT8 digital modes. We want to grow interest in those modes, and we want to create visibility of those modes being used. So that's a big one. Not only, we just don't want to create this group and have our own success and pat ourselves on the back at the end of the day. We want other people to see that, so they will all start piling in. So, part of it is we just create activity on the band. Some people might see that on their scopes and say, oh, wow, everybody's at 14,080. There must be a bunch of people running JS8 call right now. Let's check that out. I don't know if that's a JS8 call frequency. Maybe it is. That certainly creates some visibility, but we'll discuss some other strategies as well. But the long-term goal is we want to create the situation where digital mode contacts are happening all throughout the week, all times of the day. That's what we're after. That's the real true goal. I mean, the real true goal might be that this group and this coordination is no longer needed, because it's like FT8. We can get on there and make contacts anytime we want. Why do I need to go on and meet with these guys? Maybe we still do. Who knows? But I just want to have the option. If I'm going out to a park, it's solar minimums coming here in 4 or 5 years. It'd be nice to have an option other than CW and FT8, to handle really poor conditions. Some of these weak signal modes could really help us out in those years. It'd be nice to have a few other options. Okay, so how do we achieve those goals? Obviously, we do that by coordinating operation times. That's what the whole First Friday thing is about, to get people on when they know there will be likely other people on, and they will generally be able to make contacts. We'd like to encourage parks on the air operations at that time. It'd be great if there's a few of us that are out in a park, because what we can do then is spot ourselves on RTTY, on JS8, on PSK, whatever mode we're running, and put that spot there on the POTA page. And that's a lot of great visibility. There's a lot of eyes that are going to drift across that. And think how great it would be, on 20 meters, you usually see FT8, 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 FT8. There's 15 people running FT8 on POTA on a Saturday. Wouldn't it be great to have some JS8 stacked in there, or SSTV, have a few of those in there? And, if people see a bunch of those, that's really gonna get some attention. So that's another way that we can create some visibility. So we'd like to have some POTA activators out there during these Friday night meetups. And like I mentioned, packing those signals onto the the digital portions of the spectrum will be another red flag for other operators to come find us and see what's going on. I'm like, wow, look at all these guys out here making contacts on JS8. This is great. I think there will be some people. I've already received interest from some folks that already do some YouTube live streaming. That'd be fantastic. I don't know how you make a YouTube live stream about digital modes interesting. We've got some creative people out there. Maybe we can figure something out. But anything you can do to promote or create some visibility that either something is going to happen or is happening can really help us out. And again, we want to encourage all forms of digital modes. We don't want to be like that club when someone comes in and wants to do something different that we say, we don't do that here. No, we just do PSK, RTTY, SSTV, JS8. That's all we do. And we don't want your Feldhell. Now, if there's anybody that has interest in any other mode, we'd love to give all those modes a chance. So like I said, we get to that reevaluation period. If there's someone that really wants, or multiple people that really want to do Feldhell, and that's something they're really motivated for, then that's something we'll work into the rotation. If there's a couple modes out there that people are really interested in, we'll mix that in. Maybe we can do a Zoom call kind of thing where those people can present that mode to the rest of the group and talk about how to download the software, how to get it set up right, how to operate it, the protocol of using that mode. We could do things like that. But anyone that has any kind of interest, we want to provide them at least some sort of time to be able to use their mode. I also think it's important, and this is what goes wrong with Facebook sometimes in my mind, is you have two different groups. You have the nerds and the noobs. And the nerds are all in there having their own conversation, and then the noob comes in and he asks something like, oh, how do you know where the boundaries of the park are? It's some very fundamental question, and things tend to kind of go downhill from there. I think we need to provide support, and this might be like something in a Discord room. You have support for both of those needs. The nerds have a place where they can nerd out, and then there's a separate place where the noobs can come in and post their questions. Again, I think that's a lot of what goes wrong, like on the POTA page on Facebook, and you get those same introductory questions that are in the frequently asked questions over and over and over and over again, and guys get frustrated by that. So I think separating those a little bit can make that a little more successful. Just a side thought there. And again, here's the thing about the expectations. Let's have the expectation of limited success, maybe even outright failure at first. Keep that in our minds, so as we go forward, we won't be discouraged by that if that does in fact happen. And that, that'll dictate a lot about how we feel about what we've done, how successful we are. if you have really big expectations and you go up and, you think hundreds of people are going to come out and it's just going to be a melee madhouse, pile ups on these modes. And you think that's the way it's going to be, but you only make 5 or 6 contacts. 5 or 6 is a pretty good improvement based on what we have now. But because you had those really high expectations, now you feel like you failed. That's why I think that's important. So again, here's the initial schedule for the first 3 or 4 months. And these will be on the first Friday. We're talking RTTY in October, JS8 call in November, PSK31 in December, and coming around to RTTY again in January, which kind of lines up with the ARRL RTTY Roundup. So that worked out pretty cool that it's right there on the first weekend of January. And then we'll reevaluate and see what we want to change from there. So, okay, so it's the first Friday, but what time? I think the universal best time to start, that's the easiest for everyone to understand, would just be at 0 hour UTC. So actually, it's going to be Saturday at 0 UTC, which might mean more if you're an international user, and it may not be Friday night when we're talking about this. In Europe, it's Saturday morning. Or very, very late Friday night going into very, very early Saturday morning. And Australia, I don't even know what time that would be in Australia. I'm not going to even try. But the actual answer is it would be Saturday at midnight. Here in the States, where we're starting, it will be the Friday evening at 0 UTC. Now, none of this stuff is strict. Surely the schedule isn't strict. If you get on a little bit early, or, you go on Saturday morning, I'm not telling you what to do. We are simply making suggestions for people to coordinate and do generally the same thing at generally the same time, so we actually stand a chance at making some contacts and growing some interest in these modes. All right, I don't plan on becoming like a digital mode Nazi and, getting upset because we're running PSK31, but there's some other jerks out there that are doing Feldhell, when we're supposed to be doing PSK31. No, if that's what you want to do and you're making contacts, go for it. Obviously, we'll be more successful the more we can mesh and coordinate and run the same thing at the same time. But hey, if you don't have any interest in that mode, what are you going to do? So none of that stuff is terribly strict. And maybe it'll end up bleeding over into Saturday a little bit too. Some guys will get up Saturday morning and do a little more. See how that goes. Maybe that's something we could consider at our reevaluation time. Do we want to do Saturday mornings instead of Friday evenings? All that's up. I'm open. So that's most of it, generally speaking. A few clarifications. We talk about POTA a lot. That is not a requirement. You don't have to be involved in POTA at all. Hopefully you get some hunting contacts out of it, but if that doesn't matter to you, fine. That's not a requirement. We are simply using the popularity of that program to try to create some visibility, to get some exposure. And man, that seems like the best spot to start to grow these modes, to grow use in these modes. And again, we're not, it's kind of rehashing it here. We're not going to be real strict. These are merely suggested modes and times to maximize the effectiveness of the group. No other digital activities will be discouraged. Common sense stuff. All right, so now it's your turn. Add your comments to the comment section down below. We'll collect all that stuff, and at the end of the trial period, we'll decide what changes we want to make, and those comments will play a pretty big role. I don't necessarily care how this goes. Whatever we change, whatever we need to change to make it more successful, we'll do that. If we need to change the schedule, we need to change the whole approach, we need to make it more formal, we need to make it less formal, I'm open. You know, I just want usage of these modes to grow. If you want to be on the email list, send me an email. I'm good on QRZ. I'll try to remember to put my email in this in the description, so you can get that directly there. And again, you can monitor me on X, Facebook, or YouTube. X and Facebook are non-monetized if that bothers you, if that pleases you. Or obviously you can follow on this YouTube channel. I'll try to post regularly on all three to talk about, or just remind you about what's coming up. Okay, we laid out the whole 4 months, so there shouldn't be anything new until after that, but we'll do that regardless. And anything you can do to, you know, share those or create your own invites, whatever you want to do to help promote the activities, please do. All right, folks, that's what I got. That's what I've laid out. Let me know what you think. And we will plan on seeing you the first Friday of October, which is when? Why won't my calendar come up? Won't do it on my extra screen? Fine. The first Friday in October is the 3rd. So here in the States, it'll be October 3rd, the evening of October 3rd at 0 UTC. So actually, it'll be October 4th at 0 UTC if you want to go that route. But here in the States, it'll be Friday evening. And we'll see you then running RTTY. So, you know, I've kicked around the idea of whether or not we should do like how-to videos as part of this group, like in a Zoom call or a live stream or something like that. Maybe we could in the future. For right now, there are already tons of videos out there for getting your system set up to run ready. Okay, getting FLDigi or whatever software you want to use, getting that set up on whatever platform you want to use and running. But you've got a couple weeks now, a little more than, to get that set for RTTY on October 3rd. We will see you then. Drop your comments. 7-3.